A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome back once again to Films I Should Have Talked About Years Ago. Maybe a more important thing here to note, though, is that I haven't had many trips to the theater, although I was able to get a good glimpse of at least two big films that had come around pretty recently. I actually took a good look at Greenland 2, and even though I had included that before, well, in the case of this particular video, we're going to go ahead and try something different here. But that's not to say I won't do Greenland 2 at some point in the future. For now though, Send Help is our next pick here in terms of new stuff. Yeah, first time in a little while that we had anything bonus worthy. So in this case, what we're going to do here is we're going to of course talk about this piece in great detail. It has been a little while since its release, and it does show that the box office results are not exactly catching up with the likes of the budgetary level, which at this point is at $40 million compared to $32 million for the current week of the box office results. But in any case though, this is good Sam Raimi material, at least until we get our eyes on the likes of the upcoming Evil Dead Burn, which is also supposed to be released at some point in 2026. Now, whether I get to that or not, we're gonna have to wait and see what I have in store for the next few years. Talk About It universe related stuff will of course be around for a while though. The case of this particular Sam Raimi film though is a unique concept. Have you ever had the time in which that you enter a high-rise building or a corporate structure that is supposedly undergoing a number of changes, including a supposed merger? Then a number of things are expected from some people. Some might share their opinions about how much of a risk this could be, or how much of a problem it might ensue. But this, of course, is actually a bit of an appetizer for the real main course in hand. Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien, alongside many other actors in this film, are centered upon with a certain challenge. Not just regarding the company, as, of course, one of our main protagonists, Rachel McAdams' character, whom, by the way, is referred to as Miss Little. The thing is, though, is that in this particular case, we have ourselves something gnarly that goes on. Her boss apparently does see her as fit for the new CEO of the company in hand that she works at, but with his son coming around, whom is played by Dylan O'Brien, it turns out to be a lot different than what she would have expected. The thing is, between the likes of these two characters, we do have ourselves, well, a couple of things to address here. Linda and Bradley are basically subordinate and employer. That's probably the biggest thing to tackle on here. And looking at this film, it's pretty easy to hate on Bradley and feeling rather sorry for Linda because she's already got a number of problems to deal with here. I mean, she's got tapping on the floor, constant flicking on the keyboard, and a few other notable issues there. Apart from the kind of hardware she has to deal with in the office, there of course were other notes mentioned, especially from Bradley himself, as well as a old buddy of his known as Donovan. She apparently has issues with her hygiene, as one unique example. But the thing is, though, is that all of these things combined eventually force her to storm out of the workplace. Yeah, right out of the building. And this is where we get one of several instances of her screaming her head off. And if that's not crazy enough, though, one other thing to mention here is that the merger that the company is supposed to go through is going to take place in Bangkok, Thailand. Yeah, so if you think that's nuts, then you can just talk a bit about the fact that Linda, Bradley, Donovan, and a few others are scheduled on a private jet so that they can make their way over to Bangkok and discuss the final leg of the merger from there. And if this is already not being very clear to you, though, we do have a couple of things to address here. Up until this very point, I actually feel like that this is very similar to another movie that I had talked about once again not too long ago. Castaway. Yeah, you see, we have ourselves a main protagonist who has a lot of struggles and troubles with his work time, and we eventually see him on a plane, supposedly heading to another place on Earth. And this film pretty much does much of the same sort of thing. I guess the real big difference is the fact that you have a female protagonist instead of a male protagonist here, and you also have the likes of, well, her struggling, getting humiliated by her own employer, and etc. It does seem like a lot of the company is in on it just as well. In spite of her skill sets, in spite of her completion, her records, amongst many other factors that pretty much make her more than eligible for promo, you got yourself quite the pickle here. Oh, but it only gets worse from here, because what happens is that the plane undergoes a bit of a stress fracture. Eventually, a large hole in the side opens, and even though there's a struggle between Donovan and Linda to see who gets to take the survivor's seat, Linda ends up winning. And man, does Donovan go out in bloody style. Yeah, it's not to be unexpected considering Sam Raimi's own reputation, but the real trouble starts now. And if I hadn't already made it clear about how similar this is to Castaway, well, let's get to this part here. Linda finds herself washed ashore on an island, and at one point also manages to find Dylan still wearing a life vest on him for flotation in the water. He unfortunately has a massive injury on his leg, which does prohibit him from moving anytime soon. He's also unconscious for some time. Linda herself does get to working on a few different things, survival skill sets. Because one thing had been mentioned earlier about Linda, apart from her own experiences in the workplace, she seems to have some so-called survival skill sets that were supposedly made for the famous TV show Survivor. Yeah, an audition tape apparently had to be played out in the cabin of the plane prior to its impact. But, of course, Dylan wakes up at some point. Linda is, of course, busy gathering a good amount of food, even using the old spear trick, creating a fire with a lot of things, including her own wits, and amongst that, building up a small camp not far from the water itself. Even Dylan, of course, has a bit of shade for himself because being knocked out cold means he probably won't find himself in the shade anytime soon unless he had some help, which, despite how horrible of a man he was to Linda, she still went on ahead and helped him, whether by instinct or because she has a point to prove to him. Her own capabilities don't just go towards the workplace, but apparently outside of which as well. And this is just a unique feature. It really shows that the subordinate is seemingly more capable than the employer. I mean, garbage versus elite. Who do you think wins this one here? Well, Dylan, of course, does have a few things to say to Linda. He, of course, is demanding her left and right about finding rescue and way off the island and heading back to the company building. But Linda, of course, is not really budging at it. Not even a little bit. It seems the tides have turned against Dylan here because as the days go on into nights, nights go into days, time, of course, does take some time for us, even though we do get some fast transitions. Of course, Dylan's leg injury sticks around for a little while, but it does eventually heal, thankfully, to the point which he can eventually start walking again. But throughout all this time, there of course had been some instances of help arriving, of which that Linda and Dylan would never receive. Most likely because Linda, of course, is now more than enamored into just staying on the island forever, with Dylan seemingly as her hostage. Yeah, basically this is just more than some simple guys to allow for Linda to have him around. This is just because she now has her own world to control, and this island is practically her oyster. it really showcases how psychological this film can pretty much get. Much like the Evil Dead films, though, we do have some more gore coming in. Lots more blood showcased, because it turns out there's others on the island as well, and there's even a few other things that the island shockingly has to offer. The island itself apparently is home to a luxury mansion. Like, wow. This whole time we were practically led to believe it was going to be like Castaway, and Linda and Dylan were eventually going to have not only each other, but possibly like a volleyball to talk to. I mean, when you think about it though, the differentiations between them is just as impressive as the similarities between the two films. I mean, 26 years apart, of course there was going to be some similarities to it, but I guess the differentiations of it kind of goes screwball-y in the brain, kind of like how the plot and storyline itself goes. With the gore that we see, the kills that we see, and the impressive turn of tides in Linda's favor over Dylan's, I find this film to be quite incredible. Probably one of the best that we got so far. And we're only in through the first month of the year. I mean, it's February now, so it's the second month, but while we're not exactly going to be getting that many films to talk about for February, I'm sure we're going to have many more down the line. So, basically, with all the crap that Dylan and Linda find themselves in, and eventually leading up to that mansion being discovered, yeah, eventually an agreement does come around for Linda herself to finally get this CEO position that she had been hoping for years. I mean, think about it. Had it not been for Dylan's father, I'm sure that she would not have gotten that far. And more importantly, it seemed that this little trip to the island, in which that about a year would pass. The days turn to weeks, weeks turn to months, and then the 1 year that goes by. With all the crap that had unfolded here, all the screams, all the blood, sweat and tears, all the survivability that goes around, it's already incredible when you think about the fact that Linda has some good opportunities in the workplace, but also experiences in the wild, leading to her essentially becoming more than just some crappy worker that Dylan believed. But we know the truth here, right? Linda really proved herself to be a capable, strong, independent person. And we could chalk it up to the extent that proving a point to someone, no matter how horrible they are, time, of course, can take away whatever opportunities may lie ahead, but they can also open the door for a multitude of possibilities. In the case in which that Dylan realized he just couldn't bother fighting it anymore. In spite of what's happened to people around him, and in spite of things that Linda herself had done, this was practically her plan, even if it was made on short notice. I mean, it almost makes you wonder, did Linda cause the plane to crash? Well, that of course might be a weird theory, but for the most part, this was still a pretty awesome movie. I mean, all of this just deserves a big score here. So we'll just simply put it at a good 8.5 out of 10.1. And so with that in mind, while I will eventually have more Films I Should Have Talked About Years Ago episodes up and running, thank you guys very much for watching this piece, and of course I will eventually come around with them.